So now moving on to civil society, right? And you have been active in civil society. So there's always a conundrum or a bind that civil society organizations find themselves in. On one hand, they if they try to work within the system, they will get things done, but they entrench the system. They contribute to the entrenchment of the system. On the other hand, if they challenge the boundaries, probably they are going to suffer some punitive action, or depending on how much they challenge the boundaries. So what should civil society organizations or individuals do? What should activists do?
I think our system, okay, first let me get this out of the way. Okay, like I think our system does have to show a lot more appreciation for the work of activists, and not make it like a dirty word. And apparently it's not a dirty word, because like if we can say PAP activists and not see it as a bad thing, then it's not a bad thing to be an activist in other spheres. But I think, I think for the role of the activist, or how the activist can play the game, it's not terribly different from what I said about MPs, actually. I mean, arguably MPs are a kind of activists, right? Yeah, activists for Punggol, or activists for Sengkang, right? So it's similar. It's similar. So this idea of should an activist work within the boundaries that have been prescribed to him or her, or should they work? Should they challenge the boundaries? And the answer is both. Again, it's very annoying, but it really is both. Because it sounds opposing, but it's complementary. So the wisdom comes from reading the situation, or I suppose, or reading the player that you're up against, so there's going to be and the authority language, or the authority to speak about the boundary, to move the boundary, to investigate the boundaries of it. The authority to do that is based on the authority of what are the deeds that you have done, So it can't just be words activism. It has to be deed activism. And I do think there are a lot of long-standing activists who have been doing both, right? And I think we have to I suppose appreciate can be a very triggering word for somebody. You have to appreciate that part of the role of an activist is not just to manage the problem as it is, but it's also to take the leadership. And leadership is essentially about working at the boundaries, with the boundary, through the boundary, and the question of boundary, right? And an activist has to do that, and that becomes very uncomfortable because nobody likes their boundaries challenged, right? It's deeply uncomfortable, and I don't mean the government or the politicians or the leaders. I mean anyone who, anyone who's involved in, let's just take, let's say the conservative activists who, let's say, wants to lobby for banning of abortion, right? And that sort of is their democratic right to challenge that boundary and to question it and to hope to move it. But of course, they're going to trigger an immense discomfort in everybody, because boundaries are not just political boundaries, they are representative of communities, psychological and emotional boundaries as well. And I think an activist who is wise needs to be very wary of what you are doing. You're not just challenging a political boundary, you're challenging people's psychological and emotional boundaries as well. Which is why boundary work needs to be done very carefully, with a lot of discernment and a lot of intention with what words you are using, because it's sensitive territory. It has to be done. It has to be done. Because that's how we grow as a community. But we will only grow if we are getting better and better skilled at just standing at the very uncomfortable boundary, asking people to please take a look. Please take a look. Like, is this the right place to lay that boundary or not? Yeah,
Right.
rather than like bulldoze through lah, then people are
Right.
like, wow.
Right.
Yeah, and don't be shocked when people see that's the thing. If you bulldoze through and break the boundaries, right, without preparing people for what you're about to do, then the pushback is extremely violent. You know, that they will like sort of like reject you
Right.
very fast. So it's very psychologically intense work, I think. And those of us who are maybe younger or budding activists, if you want to do that work well, then I think it's good to sort of understand the psychology of human behavior and societal behaviors, so that you can do the work well. Yeah.
Right. Okay. So I think that's an excellent point about boundaries having a psychological and emotional dimension to it as well, which I think a lot of people do not. Maybe they realize, but they do not have the wisdom to navigate it. But I want to push you a little on what you said about the deeds and words, right? Why, as an activist, do I need to prove myself in the realm of deeds before I can challenge the boundaries through words? Why is that? Isn't it a right of a citizen to challenge boundaries through words and not just, what's the motivation for this? Because a lot of times when you ask ministers certain things, right, certain uncomfortable things, and then they bring
And
you
they
to
say,
another. They ask,
you
do you
do that.
volunteer? Yeah. Do you volunteer in some other realm that I yeah. So I'm thinking, is that a fair ask of a person when he or she is talking about something else, and you're talking about volunteering in some other realm? That you are basically shifting the goalpost or shifting the terrain from an uncomfortable battle to something that is within
Yes.
your own domain. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean the immediate thing that comes to mind is, and if you do have those deeds to back it up,
Right.
you can say,
I agree with
actually,
you.
I do.
Right.
And
Right.
actually, the whole of last year, I
Right.
worked with 400 migrant workers, and
Right.
out of the 400, 80% of me told me that this is an issue.
Right.
Now, then it's
Okay.
like that. Then the person who's that. Okay, so when I talk about this like two opposing concept things, right? We all have a bias, you see. So let's say the person
Yeah.
who's biased more towards deeds, he kind of needs that from you,
Right.
right? He needs you to sort of meet him where he is, which is I need to see your deeds first before I pay attention to your words. Then okay
Right.
lah, here are my deeds. Now
Right.
you see my deeds. Okay, now can you hear my words or not?
Right.
You know?
Right.
And,
Okay.
and actually, very similarly, those of us who are, let's say, biased towards words, you kind of need the person to give you the words first. Don't show me your deeds. I want to see your words as well. Yeah. So
Right.
we all have a bias, and I think it's good politics or good activism or just generally good communication to work with people where they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And cover all bases. Okay. I fair enough. I buy that. I think that's a good explanation.